scripture today, but he made the decision to leave everything and really to follow Christ. And he, in doing so, made a great contribution to the faith in the Middle Ages. A little bit about his life. Man of the century, woman of the century. You see these terms applied to so many today. Golfer of the century, composer of the century. The line no longer has any punch. But the man of the 12th century, without doubt or controversy, has to be Bernard of Clairvaux. He was an advisor of popes, preacher of the Second Crusade, defender of the faith, healer of a schism, reformer of a monastic order, scripture scholar, theologian, and eloquent preacher. Any one of these titles would distinguish an ordinary man. Yet Bernard was all of these, and he still retained a burning desire to return to the hidden life of the monastery of his younger days. In the year 1111, at the age of 20, Bernard left his home to join the monastic community of Cîteaux. His 5 brothers, 2 uncles, and some 30 young friends followed him into the monastery. Within 4 years, a monastic community that had been dying had recovered enough vitality to establish a new house in the nearby valley, with Bernard as its abbot. This zealous young man was quite demanding, though more on himself than others. Eventually, a slight breakdown of his health taught him to be more patient and understanding. The valley was soon named Clairvaux, meaning the Valley of Light. His ability as an arbitrator and counselor became widely known. More and more, he found himself being lured away from the monastery to settle long-standing disputes. On several of these occasions, he apparently stepped on some sensitive toes in Rome. Bernard was completely dedicated to the Pope, but to a letter of warning from Rome, he replied that the good fathers there had enough to do to keep the church in one piece. He said if any matters arose that warranted their interest, he would be the first to let them know. Shortly thereafter, it was Bernard who intervened in a full-blown schism and settled it in favor of the Pope against one who was claiming to be the Pope. Rome prevailed on Bernard to preach the Second Crusade throughout Europe. His eloquence was so overwhelming that a great army was assembled, and the success of the crusade seemed assured. The ideals of the men, however, who were fighting were not those of Abbot Bernard, and the project ended as a complete military and moral disaster. Bernard felt responsible in some way for the degenerative effects of this crusade. The heavy burden possibly hastened his death, which came August 20th, 1153. Bernard's life in the church was more active than we can imagine possible today. His efforts produced far-reaching results, but he knew that they would have availed little without the many hours of prayer and contemplation that brought him strength and heavenly direction. His life was characterized by a deep devotion to the Blessed Mother. His sermon and books about Mary are still the standard of Marian theology. He wrote the following: "In dangers, in doubts, in difficulties, think of Mary, call upon Mary. Let not her name depart from your lips. Never suffer it to leave your heart. And that you may surely obtain the assistance of her prayers, neglect not to walk in her footsteps. With her for guide, you shall never go astray. While invoking her, you shall never lose heart. So long as she is in your mind, you are safe from deception. While she holds your hand, you cannot fall. Under her protection, you have nothing to fear. If she walks before you, you shall not grow weary. If she shows you favor, you shall reach the goal."